Hello, friends. Today's book that we are going to check out is called Ada's Violin. Okay. And we're going to have a great time with it. Now, what I want you to check out, and I'm going to point out some cool things too to you, the pictures are amazing in this book. So if you can tell, my pictures now, my screen's kind of backwards. So if I do weird stuff, just hang with me for a second. But the pictures are made out of paper, not like I can't feel them. But the artist, Miss Sally Comport, she was able to like stack paper on top of itself and then take a picture of it, which is now in our book, which is really cool. So I'll show you some cool moments where I'm like, wow, Miss Sally did something there. She's on it. Okay, so let's join together. And I'm going to read to you Ada's Violin. And this is written by Susan Hood. Okay, and this is called Ada's Violin, the story of the recycled orchestra of Paraguay. Do you know where Paraguay is? You get bonus points if you do. Now, in the beginning of books, there's usually a dedication of some point to say like, wow, my kids are pretty cool, or I like my best friend and I'm writing this book for them. So Ada tells us that her quote in the beginning of the book is, she says, "For me, the violin means everything, life." And then our author of our book says, "For Fabio, Cola, Ada, and all of the children of the recycled orchestra, play on." And then our illustrator said, for Fabio Chavez, the recycled orchestra, and the dedicated teachers who inspire a spark and ignite the world. That's me. Just in case you haven't wondered. I'm a little crazy, so bear with me. All right, so to begin our book, Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. This little puppy dog. Look at a puppy dog. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road of Catero. I'm so sorry, I just got it. Beep, 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 backing into the landfill. They tipped their loads up and crash. The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, which are recyclers or people that picked up recycling, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates: 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet, she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, which is like your refrigerator or your oven. He also found toys, perfume, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of jewelry. I bet somebody accidentally threw that out. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise for her waiting in the landfill. Look at all these things. They found rings, they found jewelry. Wow. Sometimes I misplace stuff, and I think I threw it away, but I really just lost it in my house. All right. Every day when Ada's parents went to work, grandmother Marianne cared for Ada and her little sister Noella. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds that each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon, and young Ada was in charge of Noella until her parents were done at work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Marianne's dog and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon they joined their cousins, playing hide and seek or a game of handball in the streets. See, look, they got the cute little puppy dogs. Look how cute the puppy dogs are. I love puppy dogs. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them, to her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. It says violin, guitar, cello, taught Saturdays at 8 a.m. Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them or their parents. Do your parents do that sometimes? They just sign you up and say, you're going to go play soccer. Ada's heart sang. Thanks to her abuela, which is grandmother in Spanish, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins. To share, Ada chose the violin right away. But 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found out that there were not enough instruments to go around. I know the easy solution is to share, but sharing instruments is a little hard. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home, but it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Catuera, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chavez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthiers that made its own instruments. That was it. He asked Nicolas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum. That's this guy right here, my drum that somebody threw away. And he said, what could he use to fix it? Because we still needed this top part. He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? Oh, guess what, friends? It did. Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others, like Tito Romero, helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Look at this stuff. Look how cool. Oh, sorry, let me line you up. How cool. Soon there were enough instruments for all of the children who wanted to play. Ada chose a violin from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, but it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. This is a really cool page that I'm really excited about. I want you to look at these, oh, sorry, line myself up still. Look at these clarinets. They have buttons. Oh, I'm so sorry. They have buttons and Coke cans for their fingers. That's so cool. Here's like the snap of your jeans on this clarinet. And then for the cellos and the guitars and the violins, they would use oil drums. I'll show you a picture of one at the end. They're very cool. Senor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3 hours every day. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process, but it doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, fat, ugly, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Senor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not for Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. So if she's playing in class for 3 hours a day, and she's also playing at home for 2 hours a day, how many hours is that? That's a long time. In time, the screeches, twangs, tweets hit all the right notes. Their class became a small island, where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind, always say please and thank you, say you're sorry, be dedicated when you commit to something, Senor Chavez told the children. Soon the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, and to band together. The recycled orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air in Catuera. Gancheros trugging home from the landfills might lift their heads to hear the sound of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bebi's cello, or the strum of Noela's guitar. The symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, and their aching backs. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. And as Ada's skills grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she took center stage playing solos. Solos when you play by yourself in front of a bunch of people. They're kind of scary, but they're also kind of fun. She helped reach the younger children too, or helped teach them, I'm so sorry. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist, which is like the best violin in the class. Imagine, she was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Catuera, and later in a nearby capital city of Asunción. I'm so sorry, I absolutely slaughtered that, and somebody knows how to pronounce it correctly, but it's not me. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Can you imagine that? Going from having no instruments at all to being asked to travel all over the world. Look, let's see where we can find see if we can find out where they went. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane. They stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them, and just as they dazzled the world. If you can tell in the back, here's a map. It goes all the way across the back of the page. Look how cool. She took paper and made all this art. That's nuts. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogotá, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She just went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the recycled orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and their performance came to a close. And as their performance came to a close, a crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of. And look at how cool this is. This is totally real. This is a true life story. So look at my kiddos in there. I'm so sorry. Let me line you up. Look, we have cans here. This guy over here is my oil drum, this red and yellow. Look at how cool this is. This guy also has an oil drum for a cello. That's so cool. What an awesome true life story. If you're interested, there are all kinds of videos about them. All you have to look up is the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. Here, let me show you how to spell it. The Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. And you can watch them, like for real. Okay? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this book. I love Ada's story. It's really good for all of us to be able to see something greater in ourselves. Okay? All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.